Welcome back to Transcendence Magnetized. I'm Kristin Pierce.
And I'm Stephanie Beausheur. Last week, our friend Brianna shared the terrifying reality of her spiritual activity, a strategic, organized effort tied to a long-lived cult and its male leader from the early 1900s.
That deep dive into her experience, coupled with her historical findings, gave us the final piece of the puzzle: the location. The land marker Isabella gave us, the rows of trees, and the old cemetery, led Brianna to historical documents about a secretive gathering or community land.
This week, we pivot into the reckoning phase. We're turning that spiritual intelligence into real-world ammunition. We've secured the historical and geographical evidence to finally confront the cult leader's influence. We are so excited to share this evidence with all of you.
And we didn't stop with Brianna's initial research. We've been using every tool at our disposal: Google Maps, supported historical sites, and physical historical books to corroborate and expand on the facts about the house at the center of this battle, the Moore House in Buffalo, North Dakota.
Today, we are sharing our own experience of locating this evidence, step by step. We have uncovered crucial facts that tie the history of the house, the land, and the cult leader together. Let the transmission begin.
The home Brianna moved into, often called the Moore House, is a significant piece of local history in Buffalo, North Dakota, located at 305 3rd Street North.
It was a grand home, built in the classical revival style in 1901 for S.G. and Emma Moore. S.G. Moore was a prominent figure, an attorney and banker who moved to Buffalo in 1882. The family was substance, central to the community's development.
It was designed by architect Milton Earl Beebe and originally featured a 3-story layout with special details like stained glass from France and leather wall coverings from Morocco. The Moore family even owned the entire block, which included an ice house, a carriage house, and a barn.
But behind that beautiful architecture is a story of profound grief that connects to the geographical landmarker. In 1911, Emma Moore began planting peonies to honor her son, David, who was tragically killed in a train accident in 1907 at the age of 11.
The Greek word for peony means the healer. Emma, hoping the flowers would heal her broken heart, chose to plant only peonies.
This brings us directly back to the landmarker Isabella gave us, the rows of trees. These are undeniably tied to the Moore family's grief and the land's history.
Our investigation had to start with the central geographical anchor Brianna identified, the cemetery. It is the core of this organized influence, so we used public records to map out its history.
By accessing the Buffalo Cemetery Association documents, we uncovered facts that immediately connected the spiritual attack to the historical ownership and development of the land. We discovered the Buffalo Cemetery Association documents dating back to 1888. John C. Strong Estate donated land to be used for what is now the Buffalo, North Dakota Cemetery.
Through these documents, we also found a connection to the rows of trees. In 1909, ash trees were planted around the Buffalo Cemetery grounds, and an iron fence was purchased and placed to enclose the Buffalo Cemetery. Coincidentally, this was just 2 years after the Moore family's tragic loss.
The rows of trees are not just a vague landmarker either. The story goes that the trees were planted in 2 rows leading from the Moore house to the cemetery to shade Miss Emma Moore when walking to her son's grave. Digging more into the specifics, the cemetery is known for its rows of colorful peonies, which have graced the grounds for over 100+ years now, since 1911. This is the exact year Emma Moore began planting her peonies.
So, we're not just dealing with the remnants of an old cult. We're dealing with the spiritual residue of a mother's broken heart, strategically located at the center of this influential land between the Moore House and the Buffalo Cemetery. The cult leader who targets vulnerability would have seen this monumental, unaddressed grief as the perfect spiritual opening.
Exactly. The peonies, the symbol of healing, are now a marker for a deep wound. In fact, there is a singular peony planted directly at the front of the Moore house, still to this day. The question is, how did this symbolic act of planting these peonies lead us to uncovering the Moore family's presence in this small town?
We knew the cult leader was using an organized, pervasive, and strategic attack based on the historical evidence we had found. This forced us to look even deeper at the other organized groups operating in Buffalo, North Dakota during S.G. Moore's era to understand their involvement in their community.
Through Brianna's neighbors' historical books and archives, we found a strong presence of what is called fraternal societies in this region. These are groups of individuals known for their allegory, rigid pecking order, and a deliberate focus on self-improvement through rituals. This is where we found exhilarating pieces of ammunition.
The Grand Lodge of North Dakota, a major organized fraternal society, was formally established in the region in June 1889. This means that highly structured, non-sectarian groups were immediately active just 7 years after S.G. Moore moved to Buffalo.
Coincidentally, they also hosted an inaugural meeting at noon on June 13th of 1889. The use of specific hours and symbols reveals that organized groups in that area operated with deep, deliberate understanding of allegory and spiritual symbolism. Based on our studies on the organized fraternal society, let's talk about the controversial side. These societies are often taught self-improvement by focusing on turning the imperfect man into the morally refined man. This extreme emphasis on personal perfection creates the understanding of low self-esteem, reminding us of the energy attacks towards Isabella and Brianna.
They also require members to take binding oaths to uphold their principles and secrets. This emphasis on oaths, secrecy, and authority creates the perfect framework for the cult leader's energy to demand obedience and control. This also brings us back to the echoing words that Brianna heard from the energy stating, "Own and step in line."
That final point is the most crucial. These groups operate under the banner of the Grand Architect of the Universe, GAOTU. This spiritual ambiguity and separation from traditional religious protection creates a powerful void of certainty that a cult can easily invade and exploit motive.
That confirms the cult leader's influence is not based on random hauntings. It's based on strategic, organized understanding of hierarchy, symbolism, and spiritual vulnerability. He didn't just haunt a house. He targeted the organized structure of the community and the profound grief based on the fraternal society's beliefs.
This gave us the final context for the spiritual evidence Brianna captured. But we knew we had to dig even deeper. If this episode resonates with you, please comment, like, and subscribe now. All the links to connect with us are in the description below. Thank you.
Doing research together, peering through the historical books, Steph started to receive downloads from Spirit.
It was intense. I was immersed in these old historical documents. And suddenly, I felt this overwhelming, clear push. Spirit stated, "You need to look up the property."
And your first thought was, why? We just confirmed the location.
Exactly. But the response was chillingly direct. "There is more you will see." Following that directive, I pulled up the Google Maps street view of the Moore House property.
And watching you scroll, it was like the spiritual veil was being lifted right on the screen. The energy was actively manifesting in the physical images.
Looking towards the back of the house, behind the black iron fence, I saw what spirit wanted me to see. Focus above the cab of the white pickup truck. There is a distorted but very clear male face peering out from the foliage.
That face, hiding in the trees, aligns with the male we located in the historical books, James Muir. James was a skilled carpenter who was instrumental in constructing buildings in the Buffalo Tower City area, including aiding in the building of the Moore House in 1901.
There was no question. The photo of this man in the books and in the Google Maps images was the same. Peering over the image, we noticed one other presence, a small, pale, and distorted figure of a little girl or small child near the white sedan.
These faces confirm that the spiritual forces at work are truly making themselves known, even to cameras. They are there on the property grounds, but the question remains as to why they are still there.
James and the little girl's apparitions were a moment where the spiritual downloads merged completely with the real world's fear.
Hey, Steph, didn't Brianna's neighbors see a person hanging in the trees? The very trees that connect their side of the yard to the Moore House property?
Yes, I do remember Brianna telling us about that. Let me see if we can find anything related to that.
What we found next was definitely shocking. There is a view along the shared property line showing the dense trees that form that crucial landmarker. Look closely at the branches on the large, dense tree to the left side.
It's immediately visible. High up in the heavy dark foliage, there is a distinct, disturbing shape. It's an orange mass from the head to the chest, which looks as a body hanging from the branch. The shape is elongated with a perceptible droop. It's an undeniable spirit suspended in the branches, perfectly positioned where the neighbor's story took place.
Brianna's neighbor saw this spirit hanging in those very trees, the ones connecting their side of the yard to the Moore House property. This apparition confirms their account.
This is definitely proof. The spiritual plane is bleeding into the physical reality even more now. And the Google Maps camera captured a visual echo of an act of violence or a traumatic spiritual event tied to the land. We had documentation the violence outside the bounds of the house, once seeing the hanging energy. However, I had an inkling to go back towards the front of the house. Spirit wasn't done showing us how actively monitored this house was.
We started focusing on the windows of the actual structure, and that's when we saw a direct, unnerving energy. I want you to take a look at the front of the house, specifically the large window on the far right side of the porch.
Outline for better view. Look directly towards the dark window pane. There is a figure that is undeniable. It's a man dressed completely in black with a heavy beard and dark hair.
He isn't translucent or distorted. He is a solid, focused energy, and his expression is one of pure, unapologetic observation. He is just staring out of the window, directly into the yard.
This figure, placed directly at the front of the home, acts as a lookout. He is a watcher. The authority figure, which aligns perfectly with the organized, high-ranking influence of a cult leader.
This apparition is definitive proof the house isn't just a place of residual memory, but it's actively monitored. We thought we had seen the full picture of the organized attack, the grief, and the violence. But the last spiritual download you receive, Steph, brings the evidence right back to the central hub, the front of the Moore house itself.
This image shows an imprint of the past so clear, it's unsettling. It's a view of the front porch, the very entrance to the home that Brianna was drawn to. Pulling up this image, focus on the front porch, specifically on the far right side of the deck, behind this white railing.
I see them. There are clear outlines of two figures standing very close together. They are shadowy, but the forms are unmistakable.
Notice their proportions? The woman is distinctively shorter than the man. And the clothing. The shape of the man's coat and the woman's dress suggest they were wearing late 1800s or early 1900s clothing.
This apparition is not random. It places a foundational couple from the time period the house was built on the front steps. This is definitive proof that there are residual energies from that historical era anchored to the structure, making the house a powerful focal point that the manipulative cult leader can exploit.
The front of the house is not just haunted by a residual memory. It's holding an anchor of powerful historical energy. We thought that was the end of the visuals, but Spirit was determined to show us the full spiritual map to this land.
As we started scrolling further away from the main house, moving around the block, we were stunned by the last apparition we found. We started seeing completely different patterns of energy, showing us exactly how widespread this infection truly is.
That led us to the old barn, a structure that sits on the same block diagonal from the Moore house on the opposite side of the street. This building, a relic of the early 1900s estate, gave us the final, terrifying look at the nature of energy itself.
Check out this image. Focus your gaze past the dense trees towards the white building. You can clearly see a small, dark window on the lower story of the structure, closest to where the stairs climb to the next level of the building.
There are two distinct, stacked energies staring outward. This is the clearest visual capture of the interaction between two separate energies that we had found. The front figure. Standing right in front of the window, you can see the outline of a smaller, more human figure, consistent with a young teenager or adolescent. The white figure with dark eyes. Directly behind and looming over the front figure is a massive, opaque, full-fledged white energy with dark eyes, which is clearly an entity. It is a much larger, slender shape, suggesting it is using the younger, more human energy as a shield or an anchor energy source.
This is chilling stuff. It confirms that the attack is not just historical, but it is actively anchoring to young, vulnerable energies, exactly the same vulnerability Brianna described being exploited when they went after her self-worth.
Yes. This final image proves the energy has spread across the entire block and is using the barn as an extension of the attack as well. We have documented the origin and timeline of the property, the unresolved sadness connecting the family to the burial grounds, the organized system of control found in the area's history, and finally, the act of visual evidence surrounding the entire property.
We have moved far beyond a single house haunting. What evidence we located through historical books and Steph's spirit guide showed us was a full spiritual map of infection across the entire block, anchored in every point of historical vulnerability and current pain point with deep, shocking detail. This visual and historical ammunition is everything we have needed. That's all for our transmission. This investigation has revealed something profound about the three of us. Brianna, being drawn to the house with paranormal activity. Me, having the experience with Isabella. And Steph, receiving those evidential downloads that launched this whole investigation into a deeper matrix of spirituality. There are no coincidences in this spiritual warfare. This was not just about the rows of trees, but we had to face this and make things right.
Exactly. My journey was never meant to be a passive one. However, now was the time to place on my spiritual armor. I had a realization. I had to come there. I had to physically be in Buffalo, North Dakota to stop this activity where Brianna was living.
And we are ready. We have the historical ammunition, the spiritual evidence, and the strategic protocols. We are ready to band together and fight for restoration for these trapped souls.
The wait is almost over. Now we begin to share the accumulation of this entire journey. It's time for action. I will be driving 19 hours to get to Buffalo, North Dakota, to finally confront and end this cult and the dark energy on the property with the assistance of both Kristin and Brianna.
Next week, we dive into Episode 5, The Collapse Phase, where we enter the battlefield of the Moore home. We will go into deep detail on the house clearing, the spiritual activity, and the physical evidence we find on the property during the clearing, and how we finally dismantle the entire system of control.
As a teaser for next week, not everything stays buried in the cemetery.
If this episode resonated with you, please comment, like, and subscribe now. You can also connect with us on YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram, links in the description below. You can also visit us via our website at www.transcendencemagnetized.com. Please submit your paranormal stories on our website to have a chance to be featured on our podcast. Access our links in the description below.
Until next time, keep following the whispers.